My name is Christian Payne, Documentally online, Documentally on Twitter, and Documentally.com, which is my main blog. That's 2 L's. If you're a blogger, nowadays, to be heard, I think you need to work in multimedia. You need to utilize video, audio, photos, geographical positioning, so trying to tag some of your information to maps, and just capitalize on what storytelling is. Data plus time equals a story. There's lots of people out there who prefer to digest information in different ways, whether it be on a tablet device, a PC, listening to podcasts. So you want to deliver directly to these people. Put your blogs in their back pockets. Don't expect people to come to you anymore. Go where the eyes and ears are.
Ryan Opaz.
Ryan, some people say blogging is dead, so why do you do this conference at all?
Blogging is a concept. It comes from the words of web log, so it's logging content online. We've since then attached it to the piece of software we use to actually write online, and we identify people by that use of that software. So when I say, I often do, blogging is dead, I'm analogizing it to the same idea as we don't define people as pencil users. We don't define people by the medium or how they write. We define by what they write. And so really we're communicators. We're communicating in various ways. Somebody who communicates very well on Twitter shouldn't necessarily be any less than somebody who communicates on a traditional piece of software like WordPress. And so with Facebook taking over, with Google+, with all these other options where conversations take place, it's the communication that we need to value and not the tool that we're using to have the conversation.
And why is communicating and why specifically social media are becoming so important in the world of wine?
I think they've always been important in the world of wine. It's just now there's technology behind it. There's always been conversation, and wine is a social lubricant. There's never not been a time when people weren't blogging, but they were writing it down on pieces of paper. Today we can take and find that information online, extract data from it, and engage in new ways. That's all that's happening, and the engagement is happening over borders and places where we've never thought it could happen before.
My name's Alder Yarrow, and I run the wine blog vinography.com. Well, I think for starters, the really important thing to do is to write a lot. A blog is an exercise in writing, and in order to write well, you have to practice. They say it takes 10,000 hours to become good or to master any craft. And blogging, more than anything else, for anybody who aspires to be a writer of some sort, is an opportunity to practice in a way that you couldn't if you were a traditional journalist, where you could only write 1 column per week or 1 column per month in a magazine. Blogging is an opportunity to write often, and to write about a lot of different things and to write in a lot of different ways. And so first and foremost, it sounds stupid, but the blogger must write, and they must write a lot, and they must write often. And then beyond that, then there are different places to go. The first place to go is to write about and in the way that you want to read. And that's the way that I got started. I simply started writing about wine the way that I wanted to read about it. And for whatever that's worth, it got me a certain audience who likes to read that kind of writing. I think, however, when I started, it was a very different time. And there weren't very many wine blogs, and so there wasn't a lot of choice or opportunity. Now there are thousands of wine blogs, maybe not in Poland, but certainly around the world. And one of the things that wine bloggers have is a lot more competition, and in the face of that competition, I think it's in people's interest to specialize and to perhaps focus on a specific niche that is a particular area of the wine world that they care about. That niche can also be the way that you write about wine. Here at the conference, Andrew Jefford mentioned an opportunity he believed existed in the wine blogging world, which was to take a different point of view on wine, a humorous one or an alternative voice. And I think that's also equally an interesting niche for people to go into.
I'm Jamie Goode.
Jamie, what is good blogging?
I think there's a number of elements, but the first element that I think is very important is to blog frequently. Little and often, for me, works really well. I think the most important thing is to persevere, and so that you update your blog regularly. For me, that's the key.
Your blog is a success story. You have just reached 1 million page views per month. That is just incredible. What do you think has clicked with your blog over the years that it's become so popular?
I think I've been doing it for a long time. That really helps. You just got to persevere, and even when you don't get much traffic, you've still got to post. Lots of blogs fail because people don't get a lot of traffic initially, and they think, oh, no one's reading it, and they stop posting so often, and it's doomed to failure. Then the main thing is to blog frequently, often, but also to have your own personal voice. And ultimately, blogging, if it's going to be successful, can't be something that takes up too much time. You can't plan your blog too carefully. You've got to be kind of spontaneous of the moment. It helps if you can write. That's a real key. So if you've got a good personal voice, you're saying interesting things, and you write well, then and you add to that perseverance, then you're more likely to succeed.
Some time ago you wrote that provocative blog entry, wine blogging is dead, and there's something that has been reiterated here at this conference. So in what sense is wine blogging dead, and how can we continue to blog relevant things in the future?
What I meant by that was two things. First of all, that blogging is merely one communication tool, and so being defined as a blogger is very old-fashioned now, because now effective communicators will use blogs, they'll use Twitter, they'll use Facebook, they'll use other social media activities, and they may also have a static website as well, which has longer articles. And so it's about using a suite of communication tools. And the other thing is that blogging promised so much, and everyone thought blogging is going to change the world. And we've gone through a phase where everyone's realised that, okay, it's a communications tool, and it hasn't changed the world as much as we thought it would. It doesn't mean it's not important, and I was a bit provocative. I was looking for a bit of a verbal scrap, maybe. But I think there was a serious point there, which is that it's blogging, I think, is a very useful and important communication tool, but it's merely one communication tool, and people shouldn't define themselves as bloggers.
Okay, my name's Andrew Jefford, and I write about wine and educate about wine and communicate about wine and say whatever I can about wine whenever I get the chance.
Andrew, you're a communicator, but you're not exactly wine blogger. Why don't you blog?
Well, the truth is I used to, but I just don't have time anymore, and now I get paid to do a web-based column which is called a sort of blogging column. So all of my wine blogging energies and activities now go into that web-based column which is for decanter.com. But prior to that I used to blog on my own website, andrewjefford.com, but I have to say it was mostly ended up a bit about things other than wine, because I have to do an awful lot of writing about wine, so it's nice to just get off the subject for once in a while. And I miss being able to do that. I used to enjoy that a lot.
You had a great speech yesterday in which you mentioned that wine writers should really specialize in order to, carry on. And it's a difficult time for wine writers as a whole. They have to adapt to a lot of different situations. What would be your advice to someone who's really starting to blog about wine, to write about wine on an amateur level, the first few steps that they should take?
Yeah. Well, if you're doing it at an amateur level, there's no particular need to specialize. My advice to specialize was those who wanted to turn it into a career or a profession. My advice really to young bloggers would be just to enjoy yourself, because the wonderful thing about blogging is you can be your own boss. You don't have to write for anybody else. You don't have to meet anybody else's requirements. You have total freedom and liberty in that respect. So whatever excites you about wine, just give that excitement full voice, full rein, free expression. I think a lot of bloggers quickly become kind of nerdy bloggers. They lose the free flow spirit of that first inspired them. And I would urge everybody to hang on to that initial spirit that inspired them and just keep having fun with it, keep taking it lightly. That was something else I urged people to do in my speech, because I think a lot of wine writing is too earnest, it takes it too seriously. I think there's plenty of room for fun as well. So I would urge everybody just to keep that spirit of fun and levity in what they write. As far as writing is concerned, if you really want people to read what you've written, I think you have to take the whole obligation to write well quite seriously. And that requires something different. That requires taking time over what you write. It requires being tough with yourself, editing yourself, learning how to edit yourself, because one thing bloggers don't have is editors working for them. Professional writers nearly always have editors. Even the greatest novelists have editors, and they trust and respect those editors. Every blogger has to be their own editor, And I think that's very important too. If you really want to produce written material that other people want to read, you have to be very strict with yourself and really disciplined in what you write.
Another point that really caught my attention in your speech yesterday was that you actually would like to have more time off wine. You mentioned that you don't consider yourself a wine geek at all. Normally, wine is very addictive, both chemically but also intellectually. Wine writers and wine drinkers are people who drink wine and think about wine all the time. Do you think you are different, or is it something that everybody will reach at a certain point?
I don't know about that because I can only speak for myself. But for example, your listeners, your watchers, the people who are consuming this material come from Poland. Poland is a great tea drinking country. Well, I'm a great lover of tea. Tea is another passion of mine. So I don't want to drink wine all the time. And in fact, I think wine and tea are the perfect partners because whenever you've drunk enough wine, it's time for tea. And whenever you've drunk enough tea, it's probably time for wine. So there you are. Drinking terms, there's something else in my life. But also, intellectually, I think it's very important. If you're doing something for a profession, you have to keep yourself fresh. And I think very often wine writers just get too wrapped up in the wine world and they can't see beyond it. And one way in which you can keep yourself fresh is by leaving that world and going to other worlds and exposing yourself to stimulus in other worlds. I also have 2 little children. I try to earn a living on a purely freelance basis for a family of 4 people entirely on my own. So that requires an enormous amount of work. I have 76 commission columns a year to do. They all have to be different from each other. So once I've finished with work, then there's the children too. And then after that, the sort of time off to pursue hobbies and interests is a distant dream for me. That's why I dream about it.